Hello everyone, welcome to the fourth lecture of the fifth module, which is on 3D NAND flash memory. The disclaimers remain the same. Now that we know about these, like the basic structure of this 3D NAND flash, so we have these pillars which are kind of strings. Then there are these control gate plates which are kind of covering all the strings. Then there is this source line selector plate which is also covering all the plates. To uniquely identify or to uniquely select different strings, what we have here is we have these bit line selectors which are kind of unique, and then by appropriately choosing a proper combination of bit line and bit line selector, you can actually uniquely access one particular string. And then once you access one particular string, you just select one particular control gate and then put all the other control gates to VPass, and that is how you can select a particular cell in a particular string. So this is are the kind of control knobs through which you can access individual cells in the 3D NAND flash memory. And we saw that the bottommost layer is kind of made up of N plus diffusion layer. It's kind of detrimental from series resistance point of view. Then also we saw that you had this channel which was made up of polysilicon instead of single silicon, which was the case of 2D flash cells, be it charge trap or be it floating gate cell. And it was undoped just to remove this problem of random dopant fluctuation. However, if you are using polysilicon, you are reducing the cost, but at the same time you are introducing gain boundaries and the traps. So to reduce the impact of gain boundaries and traps, people kind of etched the channel and they filled it with a core filler. And just by reducing the thickness, they were able to reduce the number of gain boundaries, and they were also able to improve the gate control. So this is now the entire structure of the 3D NAND flash cells in a BICS. Now let me just talk about the fabrication process of this BIC, how this BICS can be fabricated. So you start here. So what you do is you start with this. So what you do is you stack. First, you kind of start with a silicon substrate. You dope it to N+. Then you stack insulator and polysilicon control gate plates on top of each other. So you first deposit insulator, then you deposit polysilicon plate, then you again deposit an insulator, then you again deposit a kind of polysilicon control gate plate, or even the bit line select plate or the source line select plate. They're all polysilicon. They may be silicited, so let me write. Polysilicon resistance is huge. So later, at a later stage, they may even be silicided to reduce resistance. But they start with polysilicon. So you have kind of stacked insulator and like polysilicon gates over here, plates over here. And then what you do? Then the second step, which is here, you kind of define your bit line selectors. Why you define your bit line selectors? Because you have to individually select particular strings, right? So the source line selector here is common to all, but it is only through the bit line selector that you're kind of selecting particular individual strings. So you define these bit line selectors via lithography. So here you have lithography step. You see, you have kind of partitioning it into several of these bit line selectors. So you have defined it like this. And then what you do? Then you etch holes. Sorry, then you etch holes. This is called punch process. So you remember when you punch a paper, you kind of etch holes and then you kind of stack papers together, club them into a file or something. So this process is same. So you kind of punch holes here. So you punch holes like this. And each of these holes, then you will have to fill. And that is how you realize these cells. So how you do that? So from here, you come to this process. So here what we did was, we first doped it N+. Then you deposited stacks of insulator and polysilicon, which kind of forms either SLS or the control gate or even the BLS. Then you pattern this BLS, which is not shown here because here it's just showing you the cross section of your pillars, I would say. So this you did, and after that you punched holes. So this is how you punch the hole. So the hole is punched till this N+ layer. So you have punched this hole till this N+ layer. You have this N+ layer. Now what you do is you deposit your ONO. So after punching till n plus, what you do? You deposit ONO. ONO or the tunneling oxide, nitride, which is storage layer, and the blocking oxide layer. So you deposit it like this. Now, since you have to kind of form, your pillars on top of this n plus. So if you look at here, all of these pillars were actually touching this n plus, right? All of these pillars were touching this n plus. However, if you deposit your ONO, you'll have some ONO over here, which will kind of insulate your pillar from your n plus. So what you need to do after this is, after your ONO deposition, you have to etch this bottom ONO layer. So if you have to etch this bottom ONO layer, if you have to remove this ONO layer from the bottom and realize this, you have to use etchants, right? And once you expose the tunneling oxide to etchants, its quality degrades, right? So in order to etch this, you have to kind of insert some etchants here, and this is your tunneling oxide. I mean. So the ONO layer here. So you have tunneling oxide, then you have like the storage layer, and then you have the blocking oxide layer. So blocking oxide layer is here. Then you have this N, then you have this tunneling oxide. So you're kind of providing etchants, or you're kind of flowing etchants into this hole, and that will also degrade some amount of your already deposited tunneling oxide on the side walls. So that way the quality of your tunneling oxide degrades in this phase. That is one of the issues during fabrication. And after that, what you do is, once you have kind of deposited your ONO and etched this bottom ONO, then you deposit polysilicon. So once you deposit this polysilicon, it kind of forms a plug. So it kind of gets here and it's like this. So this kind of now forms a plug as it fills the pillar. And this is called, the punch and plug process. The entire process of this formation of this is called punch and plug process. And after this, what you do? You kind of deposit the bitline layer. So the red one is your bitline layer. And then at last, what you do is you pattern your bitline. And as you see here, the bitline, the direction of patterning of bitline and the direction of patterning of your bit select line, that is orthogonal to each other. And this orthogonality between the bitline and the bit select line kind of helps you to, select one particular pillar. So if you want to select this pillar, it lies at the intersection of this bitline, bit select line and this bitline. So this orthogonality or this intersection of this bitline with that bit select line, that helps you uniquely kind of select one particular pillar. So this was all about, the fabrication steps of this. Now, how can you contact these control gates? I mean, this is about the fabrication of this kind of memory array. Now, how can you contact these different bit lines? How can you contact these different bit lines? How can you contact these different control gate plates? How can you contact this bottom n plus source line? Or even your bit select lines? How can you contact them? If it were this kind of rectangular structure, you won't be able to contact them, right? So what they do is, or what they did is, they kind of came up with this staircase kind of structure. So what they did is, instead of having a rectangular structure like that, as looking from the top, they kind of extend these select lines or these control gates in the form of a kind of a ladder structure or in the form of a staircase structure. And even the bottom source line, they extend it till this point. So using this staircase kind of structure, they were able to contact these different control gates, different bitline selectors, and different, and the SSL as well as the common source line. And the best part about this process is that it requires only a single lithography step. So how it requires only a single lithography step? So the first lithography step that is required here goes on in defining this photoresist. length. So only this length or this dimension, defining this dimension requires lithography. So once you define this dimension, then what you do is you perform this deep reactive ion etching. So let me write about it. So just to define that dimension, so to define the dimension of what? Photoresist. Just to define the dimension of this photoresist, you require lithography. Then what you do? You etch using reactive ion etching. So what is this reactive ion etching? So in reactive ion etching, you simply bombard your substrate with highly, reactive ions and all, and that will kind of etch them. And this is used whenever you have to kind of achieve good quality etching, vertical etching with high aspect ratio. Then you go for this reactive ion etching. So etch the PR. Then you just etch the PR or the photoresist, and this doesn't require lithography. You apply any like etching reagent on that, you etch PR, and this process is called slimming. Sorry, I missed one M. So this process is called slimming. You just slim the PR by applying any etching reagent. So what you did was you kind of reduce the dimension. You reduce the dimension. So earlier your dimension was like this, and now just by slimming process, just by exposing this PR to some reagent, you kind of thin down its dimension. And again, what you do is you perform this RIE. So by this way, now if you perform this RIE, you kind of form a staircase. So earlier the dimension of the top, like the CG1 was this much. Now if you etch it, the dimension of this will reduce to this much only. And if you see, your CG2 and CG1 kind of form a staircase configuration. So if you continue to slim, so if you continue now, if you repeat slimming and etching via RIE, and you may by repeated slimming of this PR, selective slimming of this PR and etching, you are able to achieve this staircase pattern, and it requires only one lithography step, and this way they are kind of reducing the cost. So it's cost efficient as well. So now you know how you can kind of contact these control gates. You kind of achieve one staircase pattern, and that staircase pattern also doesn't require a lot of lithography steps. It just requires one lithography step, and then just by slimming the PR and etching it again, you can kind of get a staircase kind of configuration. Okay. So now with this information, let us go to the operation. So how do you program and erase the individual cells in a 3D NAND flash, such as BICs? So we are talking about BICs only. So for program, what you do is you apply a large V control gate, right? You apply a large VWL, the word line voltage, or a V control gate voltage, and then you kind of inject electrons via FN tunneling into your storage gate. Inject electrons to storage gate via FN. So here you can apply voltages on your control gate, a large voltage, and you can also inject electrons to your storage layer. How you do that? You just kind of select one particular string, and to all the other strings, you kind of apply, you kind of boost the potential of the channel so that no electrons are injected from the channel to your storage layer in those unselected kind of strings or unselected cells. So that is how you program it. It's similar to your 2D flash cell programming. although the program mechanism is same as that in the 2D NAND flash cells, the erase in BICS is really interesting. Why so? Because if this is your polysilicon, let's say that this is your polysilicon channel, which is kind of flowing through all, and you have here you have your the source line selector gate, and then here you have the source line common, which is n plus. So here you have n plus, and this n plus is kind of, so this n plus doping will kind of reach till this part. So you have this n plus doped source line, common source line. This is your undoped poly. So in your, if you remember correctly, in your 2D cells, 2D NAND cells or floating gate, whatever it is, I mean, even if it is floating gate or charge trap cells, you had access to bulk terminal or P-well, right? So how you used to erase it? You used to apply high voltage at this bulk, or the P-well, and extract electrons from charge trap or floating gate to your channel. This is how you did it in your 2D flash cells. But here in BICS, we don't have access to this P-well. In fact, we don't have a P-well. What we have is, we have n plus diffusion or n plus common source line, which is made up of diffusion at the bottom. And on top of this, you have this source line select transistor. And then on top of it, you have several of these control gates. And you have a polysilicon channel. You don't even have access to the P-well. You cannot actually apply any voltage on this polysilicon. So that's a problem, right? That's a problem while erasing. So what people came up with is, the memory designers are also really, I would say, very brilliant people. So what they came up with is, kind of came up with this concept of utilizing gate-induced drain leakage for erasing. Now, if you may remember about this gate-induced drain leakage or GIDL phenomena, you may know that GIDL is kind of detrimental for, so let me write it. So GIDL is detrimental for MOSFETs, right? Why so? Because it increases the leakage. However, here they kind of used something which is detrimental for the MOSFETs to achieve erase operation and to kind of enable the erase operation in BICS. So that is why memory field is so nice. I like the memory field because whatever people claim that is not good for logic devices like GIDL, like impact ionization, like hot electron injection. So these are some things which are very detrimental or very bad for your logic devices. But for these memory devices, they are using these mechanisms for enabling programming erase. Isn't that a beauty? I would say that is something which always boggles my mind. Anyways, so what exactly is GIDL? So let me discuss that. So in a MOSFET, you have this drain. Let's say you have this gate. So unintentionally, there is an overlap between the gate and drain. So you have this as gate or drain overlap region. So let me just write it. So you have a gate on drain overlap region. Now, if you apply a negative voltage on the gate, so if you apply a negative voltage on the gate, and let's say you already have a particular VD, you have a drain voltage applied. So let us look at this region, gate on drain region, like this region along this cut line. Let us analyze the drain region along this cut line. Let's draw the band diagram along this cut line here itself. So this is your kind of oxide. So let me use green color because I have denoted the cut line by green. So let us draw that band diagram over here. So you have this oxide layer, and since the gate is negative and drain is positive, you have field direction like this, and the band bending in the oxide will be in this direction. And within the drain, if you see, since you have applied a negative potential to the gate, so what it will do, it will kind of repel the electrons close to the surface within the drain. So it will kind of deplete the drain surface close to the interface between oxide and drain. So you will have the energy bands within the drain close to the surface looking like this. Since it's depleted, so it kind of moves away from the EF, close to the interface. So close to the interface, so here you have EF like this, very close to your conduction band. You have your EF like this, you have your EC like this. So in the bulk, your EC is very close to EF since it's an N+ drain. But close to the surface, your EC goes way above your EF just because it is kind of depleted. And in some case, if your applied gate voltage is very negative, then you may even invert the surface of the drain and you may even inject a positive sheet charge. So that is also possible. So once you have this kind of configuration, you see that there are these electrons over here, which see a very small path, or which we see a very small barrier for tunneling. So what this leads to is, this kind of a configuration, this kind of a band configuration leads to band-to-band tunneling within the drain. From where to where? From the depleted part of drain at the surface or interface of drain and gate oxide to bulk of drain. So this tunneling takes place within the drain itself, and because of this BTBT, which is due to GIDL, and this BTBT is within the drain, we also mentioned that there is generation of holes. Generation of holes in the drain. The crux of this is that, because of this GIDL, you can generate holes. Now, let us see what happens in your, how you perform erase in your bricks. So what they do is, just by applying appropriate bias on this SLS here, they kind of generate GIDL in this region, because this is N+ doped. So what they do is they kind of first deplete it here, and then they kind of generate these holes because of this GIDL mechanism. And now these generated holes, they kind of flow towards this channel, which is of polysilica. And we know for sure that accumulation of these holes is perceived as application of a positive potential, right? So just by this GIDL mechanism close to the source line select transistor, what they do, they kind of generate these holes, and these generated holes boost or increase the potential of channel region. And once the potential is increased, what may happen? Back tunneling from the charge electrons can back tunnel from the charge storage layer into your channel. So this is how erase is achieved. GIDL at the SLS transistor. Now you may also wonder that I'm calling it transistor, but I have only N+ here at the bottom, right? I don't have N+, right? I don't have N+ here. So how these cells work is, I mean, these flash cells here, I mean, okay, so let me write that as well. So here, your 2D flash cells have dedicated doped source and drain regions. But here in 3D, your BLS or your SLS has one dedicated terminal, one dedicated doped terminal. So let me just draw it here. So you have this pillar, you have this N plus source line, and close to bit line also, just to achieve a good ohmic contact, they're doped N plus. So it is doped N plus only at the top and the bottom. So you have this SLS over here, you have this BLS over here, and then you have these CGs, right? CG1, CG2, let's call like this. So you have only one dedicated dope terminal. So you still have one dedicated dope terminal for BLSL and SLS. But what about CGs? What about CGs? What about the other cells? So these cells don't have any source or drain region which is doped. So let me draw that with other pen. So these don't have a doped source and drain region, but they have virtual source and drain. And how those virtual source and drain regions are kind of introduced. So because of these fringing fields, through these control gates, if you apply any large voltage here, like if you apply VPass here, then because of these fringing fields, some amount of this channel is inverted in the region between the cells. So let me write this. When you apply VPass, because of the fringing fields, or the fringing fields lead to inversion in the region between your cells, and that is how you have this virtual source and drain region. If there were no fringing fields, if there were no spacer between the control gates, there were no virtual source and drain regions, and if there were no virtual source and drain regions, then there would have been a very increased series resistance, and that would have led to very low string current. So this was about the virtual source and drain region creation. Okay, so now can you list from this discussion till now, can you list the number of issues with the mix? So let me just give you some idea. So the first idea is related to the tunneling oxide. So here during fabrication, since you are kind of etching or exposing the tunneling oxide to etchants, so the quality of tunneling oxide is poor. So if your quality of tunneling oxide is poor, then what happens? Cell reliability is less, right? So the cell reliability is one issue because of exposure of tunneling oxide to etchants. What may be the second issue? You have an N plus diffused common source line. So it offers a very high series resistance, right? So the series resistance of your source line is very high. If the series resistance of source line is high, your kind of string current will automatically decay. Right? And the third part is you are performing erase with the help of this GIDL of this source line select transistor, right? And if you look here, the source line select transistor is at the bottom, right? The source line select transistor is here. The intersection of this pillar with the source line select plate kind of gives you the source line transistors. So your source line transistors is at the bottom. So SLS is at bottom. So if you have like 64 layer or 192 layers on top of it, accurately kind of fabricating it or its accurate operation may be a challenge. So let me write that. So your SLS is at the bottom, and if you have like 64 or 192 layers on top of it, the quality of this SLS transistor is not, I would say, well defined, because it's less accessible, right? And it's one of the first things that you have deposited. So as you build things on top of it, definitely the quality of this, or you'll be exposing this to the future kind of, I would say, processing conditions, and the quality of the transistor would be degraded because of that. Just because it is at the bottom, you are not able to, very accurately define its properties, or fabricate it, or like prevent it from being exposed to the other process conditions. So because of that, the quality of this SLS transistor is bad, and which is detrimental. Why? Because we have to perform erase with this. That is the only thing which is responsible for erase. So that way also it's kind of an issue with this big structure. So now in this discussion on the big structure, we'll look at the other innovations in the big structure, which kind of tend to mitigate these issues with the big structure.